Thank you for joining today's Teaching with Technology Brown Bag session, Bite-Sized Lessons, Microlearning for Increased Engagement and Retention. Our presenters today are Simone Fari, an instructional designer and media producer with the ETI, and Dr. Linda McCauley, an e-learning and instructional designer also from the ETI. Dr. McCauley will start us off today.
This is our goals list for today, and what we're planning on doing is defining microlearning, explaining how microlearning enhances knowledge retention, identify key characteristics of effective microlearning, and to showcase microlearning's benefits. Now, one of the things we're planning on doing is using a microlearning mindset as we go through this presentation. So as we go through, you'll notice that our slides are color-coded for each of these individual goals being an individual component or microlearning element, because each segment can stand on its own. So now let's begin with our first microlearning unit on the definition of microlearning.
In our first microlearning unit, we will define the term. So what exactly is microlearning? There's not a commonly agreed upon definition, so we adapted one from Cronin and Durham that they wrote in 2024. In it, they say that microlearning is a teaching strategy, not just one narrow way of doing things, and it's self-directed and on demand, which empowers the learner to consume what they need when they need it. And while there's no agreed upon size or length, it's chunked into small bite-sized pieces. It's focused on only one single objective. It may use interactive content. It's multimodal, which means that there are many different teaching modalities that can be used for microlearning. And finally, it should be convenient. The learner should be able to access it when they need it. Now, if some of this sounds a little bit familiar, it may be because you've seen our previous brown bag on chunking instructional content, because microlearning is essentially the practical application of chunking in an educational context. Every microlearning module is, in essence, a well-defined chunk of information. By breaking down a larger topic into a series of microlessons, educators are leveraging the power of chunking to optimize learning. Now, what I think first comes to mind for a lot of us when we think of microlearning is, short videos, like little animations or just quick little explainers where somebody took out their phone and recorded themselves giving a little tip. But not all videos are microlearning, in the same way that a 1-hour documentary wouldn't qualify. For example, since microlearning is multimodal, videos are hardly the only modality that can be used to deliver microlearning. So some other examples might be infographics, PDFs, job aids, checklists, emails, webinars, and online learning modules. So similar to video, while these all can be used for microlearning, they can also be used for longer types of education and training as well. And this is just a list that's currently available to USIS. As the technology advances, new modalities will be developed, so it's important to stay current. No matter what the technological medium used or the topic to be learned, we can use microlearning when we want to acquire knowledge or we want to apply it. So it can be used to both improve our breadth and the depth of our knowledge. But the key is to do so short, single-focused content. And there you have it, one chunk of microlearning. It was about one objective, learning the definition of microlearning. There's solid evidence that microlearning is a strategy well worth incorporating in your teaching strategies, which we'll talk more about in the next module. In this segment, we're going to talk about the theory behind microlearning, why it's so effective. There are a number of cognitive theories that explain how the human brain learns and retains information, which support why we should adopt microlearning techniques and strategies when we design education and training. Microlearning just makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about our current environment of constant distraction where many different things are vying for our precious attention. First theory that verifies the worth of microlearning is the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. It shows how our ability to retain what we've learned fades rather quickly as time goes by. So it makes sense that short, focused chunks of information that immediately address learning needs are going to be easier for the learner to remember. On top of that, there's the phenomena of cognitive overload. So what does that mean? The American Psychological Association defines it as a situation in which the demands placed on a person by mental work, or the cognitive load, are greater than the person's mental abilities to cope with it. It's a situation where learners are given too much information or too many tasks too quickly. The result is that the learner is unable to process all the information. This can trigger anxiety and stress, which further reduces their ability to learn. Now, as a novice, your learner doesn't know all that you know yet, so they reach a state of cognitive overload much more quickly than you might. But since microlearning is short and focused, it's much less likely to cause cognitive overload. Another theory is called the information processing theory. It uses the computer as a metaphor for how the human mind processes information. It involves stages like sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory. Microlearning, by presenting information in small, digestible chunks, aims to minimize the strain on working memory, allowing for more efficient encoding into long-term memory. The focused nature of microlearning can also aid in attention and selective processing, which are key components of information processing theory. Next up is scaffolding theory, which is primarily attributed to Jerome Bruner. This encourages us to think of providing learners with temporary support structures or scaffolds that will help them master tasks that would be too difficult to achieve independently. Microlearning inherently breaks down complex topics so that each micromodule can focus on a specific subskill or concept, building towards a larger competency. Since microlearning is convenient and on demand, it can provide just-in-time support, which helps with the scaffolding process. For instance, a short video demonstrating a specific clinical skill can act as a scaffold before a simulation exercise. Scaffolded microlearning can cater to different learning needs by offering varied levels of support within the modules themselves. For example, optional hints, glossaries, or links to more detailed information can be provided for learners who need them, while more proficient learners can proceed without those supports. Prerequisite knowledge can also be provided separately. Learners who don't need the refresher can focus on what they need to learn. Effective scaffolding connects new information to learners' existing knowledge. Microlearning modules can be designed to explicitly build upon previously learned concepts, creating a structured progression of understanding. Lastly, let's talk about motivation and how microlearning can contribute to it. The importance of motivation in maintaining focus and completing a learning assignment has long been a key tenet of adult learning theory. Since microlearning is easier to complete, it gives learners a sense of progress and accomplishment, as do short lessons and quick quizzes as well. They give them that sense that they've actually been able to move forward. They are less likely to feel overwhelmed and thus motivated to continue with their learning. Learners are also better able to refresh their memories of the prerequisite knowledge when needed, thus improving their odds of mastering the learning objective. Now, we all know that medical students tend to be highly motivated already. However, microlearning can help even them with motivation because it gives them that sense of progress and it makes their learning more manageable and rewarding and feel less overwhelming. Through all of these theories, we can see that microlearning enhances knowledge retention and leads to engagement and success. There are 6 widely recognized key characteristics of microlearning. The first is that microlearning must be focused on a single objective. A learning objective, as I'm sure you already know, is that specific statement that expresses measurably what a learner will be able to do as a result of the training. Another important characteristic to remember is that microlearning has the ability to stand alone or be part of a larger series. We designed this presentation about microlearning so that each of these individual microlearning units could be watched separately. But together, they should build upon your understanding of what microlearning is and why you should use it. When you design any learning, it is always important to consider the prerequisites. What is that foundational knowledge people will need to have already to master the objective? And in this case, we realized that some of you might not be familiar with the term microlearning or what it means. So we started with a microlearning unit on the definition, since that's a prerequisite to understanding the theory and the characteristics and being able to appreciate the examples that we're going to show you in the showcase. But if 6 months later, you want to go to YouTube and watch this brown bag for a refresher just on the theory or maybe the characteristics, you'll be able to skip by the definition and go right to that section you want. So it'll be just in time. For those of you who have access to our video server Panopto, you can take a series of short videos and package them together either in a playlist or a folder. Have one long video, you can create chapters to help break it up. And then between those chapters, you can even add interactive questions between them. As we said in the definition, microlearning consists of small chunks. Now, research proves what we are all instinctively noticing, that attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. There's no ideal length for microlearning. We've seen recommendations for 1 to 3 minutes or no longer than 20. But really, it's not about being short for the sake of being short. It's about being able to provide the right level of support at the right time to facilitate learning and mastery. So it's something that should be as long as it needs to be, but no longer. And one way to do that is to remove that extraneous information. So it's not enough for the information to be fun and interesting. It should contribute directly to mastery of the objective. So think about your need to know versus your nice to know. And we encourage you to look at the analytics of some of those recorded lectures that you post in Canvas. And sometimes that can be a little discouraging when you see that more viewers are starting the video than are finishing it. And sometimes, it can be the 3 minutes that's allegedly the average that people are watching videos these days. If you're seeing that a lot, think, okay, what kind of microlearning principles that we're seeing here might we apply to improve our engagement with the content? One of them might be what we call front loading, or beginning with the most important content. That applies for all education and training, not just microlearning, because we know the learner is most motivated and focused in the beginnings. So we try to get that key information out ahead. And another characteristic of microlearning, which is also best practice for other types of training and education, is called signaling or cueing. And that's where you use on-screen text or symbols or other graphic elements to highlight important information. And the reason for this is because it reduces that cognitive overload by cueing the learner about what is most important. It saves them time and distraction. They don't have to scan all over the image to try to figure out what you're talking about. And it helps to emphasize organization and connection. And here's a few examples now of how we can apply signaling. The first one is by using keywords instead of large chunks of text. So when you do that, it reduces what's called the redundancy principle. Now, you might think writing out the whole text on the slide and then saying it would double the impact, but it actually doesn't, because the brain processes what it sees and what it hears differently. So it actually increases cognitive load. So what we're doing here in the slide is we provide just a few words to help you focus and emphasize the key takeaways of it. In this example, you're going to show you a few uses of symbols to help the learner more quickly track on what you're talking about without getting distracted. And these are easy to create with PowerPoint and Google Slides. The first one would be an arrow. Another might be a circle. And there's a bonus for this when you're actually lecturing. Sometimes you take a mouse and you're trying to get the person to focus on that one area. But first of all, sometimes you fumble around with the mouse. It's hard to control it. And then also it's hard for the learner to see what's inside that, invisible circle you're trying to make, and their eyes start tracking on the movement of the mouse instead. The symbol is a better way to do that. When you do it, use those bright, bold colors like we did, high contrast. It's a good practice for everyone, not just those who are colorblind or may not see the full color spectrum. Microlearning should be now and not later. Because it's focused and targeted in scale, microlearning approach allows you to provide just-in-time resources for your learners.
So think about how you can produce those quick chunks of information they need using the tools and skills that you already have and know how to use. Because time is of the essence for creation, because microlearning is for people who need help now, not months from now. A microlearning approach is especially appropriate for content that changes because it's easier to update or replace a short video or other resource than a longer one. So, for example, Canvas is always improving and updating their features. They're updating one about discussion boards, for example. It's easier for us to just replace a short video about discussion boards than have to go in and edit a comprehensive video that includes discussion boards and a whole bunch of other features. And that right there was another chunk of microlearning. It was about one objective: learning the 6 key characteristics of microlearning. So we thought, besides this particular brown bag, it might be helpful for you to see other examples of microlearning that we've done. It's a short survey. We've done a whole lot more than this. First of all, there's our Coffee and Canvas video called End of Module Page. Some of you who've been here a while might remember Sakai, which was our previous learning management system. It was phased out, and Canvas was gradually phased in as our new learning management system. As that transition took place, we realized that not as many people needed a full program about Canvas anymore. So we started to create focused short videos on specific topics that we knew faculty at USIS needed to be successful with Canvas. And these were often based on the questions we were getting or issues that people were having, so we could make a just-in-time response to those. The series again is called Coffee and Canvas. And one example is this 4-minute video we did. It's called End of Module Page. All it's about is the whys and hows of putting a special page called End of Module for the learner to understand, okay, we're done with this module. And you can see this video and many others in the Coffee and Canvas playlist that we have in Panopto. You can access that through the Help menu in Canvas. And here's a page from our Designing Instructions for Success with Canvas Orientation class. In it, you can see that we've designed this page so that we're using headers. And those headers kind of visually show you where we start little new segments of information and allow your eyes to skim and scan to them more quickly. And then we also embedded a short video. So there's another way that we're presenting chunks of information, and the learner can quickly see and go to what they need. When you design this way, it's a whole lot easier to update and swap things out every year, rather than having to go through a whole long document that's just a big wall of text and figure out what you need to swap out. But ETI does a whole lot more than Canvas. This, for example, is an infographic that we did, and it boils down the common causes of anaphylaxis. Now, I realize it's a little hard for you to read the type on this slide because it's a smaller type than we normally recommend. In this case, it's not meant to be shown on a slide, but rather to distribute it as a kind of handout, and as such, it can make an excellent resource and reference. We hope this session has provided you with valuable insights into how microlearning can significantly enhance engagement and knowledge retention in your teaching strategies. By breaking down complex information into bite-sized, focused chunks, you can create more effective and accessible learning experiences for your students. We encourage you to explore incorporating microlearning principles into your own instructional content to foster a more engaging and successful learning environment.
Thank you for watching today's Teaching with Technology Brown Bag. You can view all Teaching with Technology Brown Bags on the USU YouTube channel under the full ETI playlist. Have a nice day.